Let me set something. Okay, so basically, one way to overcome this copyright law limitation, because every every IP protection needs to be protected in each country individually. One way your IP can be protected is by when those countries have trade agreements with each other. So when a country has trade agreement with another country, they can make it a part of the agreement that they will also respect their their IP protection laws. Okay, so let's say if Malaysia has a trade agreement with China, they may choose to put into the trade agreement that China must respect the Malaysian IP protection law. Okay, that means they cannot copy or steal the trademarks of Malaysian IPs. Okay, so if they agree to it, let's say if China agrees to it, it's worth a lot of money. That trade agreement is worth a lot of money to them, and they agree to it, then your IPs will also be protected in that country. All right, in this case, China, for example, okay, and this is why countries, when they negotiate trade agreements, will try to put in the IP protection law. But that also depends on how lucrative that trade agreement is. If the country thinks that it's not worth it, they may say, no, I will sign this trade agreement with you, but it's such a small sum, I'm not going to follow the IP protection law thing. Okay, so where IP is concerned internationally, you have to see how each country is actually acting with that other nation. Okay, so these are normally called IP protection agreements between countries. That means a particular country, if they want a certain trade agreement with another country, will have to try and respect their IPs. This is to prevent those countries that they are trading with do not steal their technologies. Okay, and US is very well known for doing this, and that is the reason, one of the reasons why Malaysia for so many years after independence have never signed a trade agreement with the United States. Okay, so that Malaysians can choose to copy or steal the IP from US. Okay, and of course China themselves have always refused to sign any such IP protection agreements with other countries, because they intend to use another country's IPs to help enrich their own country and their own people, so that they can use that technology or those technologies. Okay, make sense? All right, so this is why one of the best countries to actually register your IPs in is the United States. All right, because they have trade agreements that includes these IP protection laws or agreements with so many other countries. Okay, so this is one of the ways many companies actually make it a bit cheaper to protect their IPs by registering it in US. Okay, so this is one of the tricks to go through this loophole, because since US as a country, as a nation, has so many trade agreements with so many other countries, by registering your copyright or your trademark in US, all those countries that are following based on that trade agreement with United States of America to respect their IP laws will also be forced to respect your IP. Okay, so this is a workaround. Make sense? Okay, but if the nations that do not have such agreements with the United States, of course, will not be protected lah. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. All right, now let's go into each of separate IP protection types. Okay, first let's talk about copyright, because copyrights are different from all the other IP protection. Unlike all the other things like trademarks and patents and industrial designs and geographical indicators and trade secrets, copyright is created to protect works of creativity, works of art actually. Alright, and by this I don't mean just drawings. Alright, it is used to protect all forms of artistic work, and it only applies to artistic work. So you cannot copyright an invention, you cannot copyright a program, but you can copyright a piece of art, a drawing. You can copyright a statue, alright, as an artwork. You can copyright a music. You can copyright a book. The main limitation of copyright is that it must be an exact copy. Alright, so let's say for example, you write music, this piece of music, a beautiful piece of music, and then you copyright it. Alright, it is only that exact music that is copyrighted. If someone takes your music and modifies a certain percentage of it, which is different from country to country. In US, you must modify a piece of music by at least 80% before it is considered a different piece of music. Alright, at least 80% of the music must be different to consider it as a different piece of music. Then music is copyrighted and no one else can use that piece of music. So if you draw, let's say, a character on a piece of paper and you choose to copyright that drawing, only that drawing is copyrighted. If someone draws the same character in a different pose, which is more than a certain percentage different from your character, your drawing. So let's say, for example, you draw this character sitting on a chair. Someone else in another country maybe, or in your same country, if he draws the same character lying down and the artwork that he does is more than 80% different from your artwork, it is not considered the same piece of art, and copyright does not help him protect that character. Okay, so this is one of the key things you need to understand. Copyright protects only that specific piece of work. Alright, if someone else draw it different enough, even if it's the same character, it is not copyrighted. Alright, so if let's say you make a piece of music, alright, someone else copy a little bit of your music, 20% of your music, alright, and do the rest of the music himself, or the music is different enough from yours, alright, 80% different from yours, it is considered a separate piece of work, not your work, and you are not copyrighted. So you cannot sue the other person for copying your thing, even if it is the same character. Alright? Because your piece of art is different from his piece of art. Does that make sense? Okay? So this is one of the limitations of copyrights. Okay? So copyrights is created to protect works of art. And these works of arts can be literary or artistic works of art. It can range from books to paintings to sculpture to films to computer programs to databases, okay, to advertisements to maps, technical drawings, and so on. Anything in which you can actually draw it out or compose it out into a recording. So it must have something physical. Alright? Either a recording of your music for things that are not physical, or it may be an actual piece of art that you draw out. So it must be a tangible product. Then you can copyright it. And your copywriting, country to country, is different. Your copyright of that piece of art will need to be, if someone else wants to be inspired by it, it will only be considered a copy if a certain percentage of that art that he created is different from yours. Okay, so let's say for example in US, alright, for music is